here we are again, episode 8 of We Take the Stairs.
Welcome back.
Yes, it's exciting to be here. And this week we have another episode where we're going to switch things up a little bit. And I'm excited to have the conversation because we have another guest in the studio. Well, not in the studio, but involved in our podcast this week. So it's neat to always have a new perspective in the discourse. So, of course, I'm Liz.
I'm Rachel.
I'm Junior, and Z is not here today. He has some functions to do, but obviously he will join us next week.
Yep. And we're joined by Meg, who, thank you so much for being on here, Meg. I'm just going to quickly introduce her. She's originally from San Francisco Bay Area and now lives in Brooklyn, New York. Meg Worth has spent over 10 years in talent acquisition. As a director at an executive search firm, she focuses on operations, administrative, and strategic functions. Outside of work, she loves staying active, exploring new places, and spending time with family and friends. That was an approved blurb. So, Meg, thank you so much for being on here.
Absolutely. Thank you for the intro.
So today I'm just going to jump in because I have this whole intro and I'm going to not actually do it today. Because I really find that this topic is going to be important. This stems from a number of conversations that I have had with young men recently. And as a woman, I've had to really sit and I've had to pause and think about it. And then I've sort of come to my own conclusions about it. But we were originally going to address men as online targets. And I still think that it applies. But what we are actually hoping, and I'm hoping you guys are going to be good with this, is that we're going to discuss sort of how men's baser instincts are coming under attack. Specifically, the protective instinct and how it's being seen as controlling. And while as humans, we all sort of walk a very thin line between something looking controlling or being protective or looking one way and then maybe going to an extreme as another. There are instincts within all of us that I think that are very important. So today I'd like to discuss specifically, because I have been asked by a number of guys to discuss, for example, when a girl dresses in a specific way and her boyfriend asks her perhaps, can you not dress like that when you're not with me, why is that automatically seen as controlling or heard in a way as controlling when in fact he's only trying to protect her? Now, I did not actually pose this question. This is a question that has been asked of me to be posed on air on this podcast so that we could discuss it. And it's not just one or two guys. I pull a number of guys, and this is a really big issue out there. Men being seen as controlling or maybe behaving in a controlling manner, and the balance between those two things. So again, Meg, thank you for joining us, and I'd just like to open up the conversation.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I think that it's perceived as controlling because it is. And I also think that there was a way, I don't know exactly how the person phrased the question to you, but in the latter half of the question, you said because he's only trying to protect her or something like that. But
Correct.
You used the word only. But I think the intentions are where the gray area comes in, because what someone expresses as their intention may not very well be their true intention. Whether they realize that or not, that's a totally different thing. But I think the underlying, for me at least, the underlying conclusion is that it comes off as controlling because it is. But what is the recipient of that request perceiving as controlling? Do they perceive controlling as a good thing? Do they perceive it as someone cares about me and is trying to protect me? Or do they perceive it as this person is trying to deny me my autonomy and control me? So perception is a big part of that type of conversation.
True.
It's who are the two people having the conversation? And how does the person receiving that message respond to it? So it's definitely not a black and white,
Agreed.
linear type of situation, because intention is one thing, expressed intention and, concealed intention, and the intention that's inferred as well, that, because you said this was a teenager who posed the question,
A
right?
number of them,
Yeah.
yes.
So
but yes.
at that age, there's a lot of learning and unlearning and relearning and modeling and copying of behavior that they see in entertainment, in their families. And 9 times out of 10, a person that age hasn't really come to their own conclusion about who they are yet. Not that we're not all constantly reevaluating who we are, but at that age especially, there's a lot of regurgitation and modeling of what they see at home, what they see in the media, what they see in their social circles. So that's why I say intention is a really important thing, because they just may be conveying themselves in a way where their intention is unclear to themselves and to the person they're communicating with.
I think I want to agree with you, and I am going to agree with you, and not I think, I do agree with you. In any scenario, in any case, you can assume that to protect is to control, right? Because to protect means to try to minimize any risk of harm
Right.
or injury.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to do that, you have to control a situation. There, as you said, there's no black and white there. That is the reality. You have to control in order to protect.
Yes.
They go hand in hand.
I feel that way as a parent.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You have to. There's no way that I can say, hey, I want to protect you and not try to control the situation. Because it simply means that I'm saying I'm seeing the danger before you do. Because if you're acting without protective guard, I'm stepping in to give you protective guard because you're not seeing the proper situation. And in order to do that, to protect, I have to guard you, which means I have to control the situation. Yes, intent is very important, but I think what we have to come to terms with is no matter what, if you are protecting, you are controlling. The problem is the control becomes extreme. When it becomes a control for personal purpose rather than a control for the betterment of someone, that's where the lines are blurred, right? I cannot want to protect you for my personal purpose. I cannot want to protect you because I don't want nobody else to look at you. I can't protect you because I want to make sure that whatever you have is for me and for me only.
What if it's you as a male understanding what's out there?
No, absolutely. What I'm showing you is there's a blurred line, right? There's no disagreement or agreement here, right? We're bringing the context to the table. The reality is you cannot protect without control, and you should not control for your purpose. You should control for the betterment of someone. Now, if it is that we're living in a world where we have a heighten of certain situations and you yourself are saying, hey, I know at school that a lot of guys might be talking about you in such a way, yada, yada, yada. I think I'm giving you my opinion. This is something that you don't have to take, but my opinion is you should dress in a completely different way to not allow people to talk about you in that way. I think that's a very noble conversation.
Okay, Meg?
I think, I agree with what's been said so far. And I think, there is an opportunity where protecting can lead to ego and can lead to I'm protecting you from what I don't want to happen.
Right.
And that can feel minimizing to an individual. A little bit about me, and I'll keep this brief, but since my first interaction, that I can remember was when I was 4 years old, and I'm not going to take you the 32 years beyond that, but it's since I was 4, image has been a big thing to me. I was severely overweight as a child, and playing sports, being in school, being in social settings. My weight was always a topic of conversation. I went on my first diet when I was 9 years old. And so everything has been very critical about the image and the image that I'm presenting or that I'm comfortable to present, what I've been told I should or should not be wearing. There was a guest at Christmas one year that I was so proud to finally fit into an Abercrombie shirt. And the moment I pulled it out, and I actually that year with my mom went to the mall before and picked out the clothes that would fit me so that I wouldn't be embarrassed to open it. And this individual at our family Christmas said, that's going to be too small for you. You can't wear it. So there have been conversations that have always been top of my mind because that's not protection. That is out of a malicious intent, which we have to be very, very careful of not protecting towards our own ego or controlling out of what we want to separate or take somebody away from. If it's out of love, if it is out of concern, I think where the problem exists, is that people are afraid to have conversations. So it feels like it's a directive. And then when that directive comes, then the guard goes up. And that's when somebody may have a tendency to respond with, well, you're trying to control, you're trying to do this because it's really difficult to sit in a conversation. Well, what is it about this outfit? Or what is it about this situation that you don't want me to be a part of? Why don't you want me to take the subway after 10 p.m.? People are afraid or are not as ready to have those types of conversations. And that's where it can feel combative.
I agree with that.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I think right now men are a little bit, the men that I've spoken to, I don't want to generalize, that never goes well. But the men I've spoken to are extremely frustrated because I know that we've spoken about previously that sometimes when we were talking about men in communication, that men sit in a room or in a place with somebody and they decide, okay, I'm just not going to say anything. But then here, I guess, is where maybe I feel a little bit differently, mostly the same as what everybody said. I notice in myself, other females, the minute that they haven't necessarily listened or to that advice that they've been given, they then run back to the guy. This is the feedback that I've been given. And, oh my goodness, this happened at the club. Or, oh my goodness, this creeper on the street did this. And the guy says, yeah, that's kind of what I was trying to say. If you dress like that, you're asking for it. And
that's disgusting.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You don't feel that there's accountability?
No, because no one is.
There is accountability.
There's accountability,
I think what she's
but
saying,
no one's gonna blame me for someone else assaulting me, even if I was. It doesn't matter, what I have on. I think that's very dangerous to teach young women, especially coming from young men, because it doesn't matter what a woman wears. Women are harassed in fully covered, clothing that fully covers them. Women are harassed.
That's true.
No matter what they put on, no matter how much makeup, no matter how tight it is, how loose it is, 4-year-olds are sexually abused. Babies are sexually abused. It doesn't matter.
Well, that's a little. I wasn't talking about sexual abuse,
but either way, harassment, sexual abuse, that is what it is. When someone is like, I guess the connotation of like a creeper, then it was. What other
like a guy who
is
like
that?
A creepy guy who stares, or someone who sits and like stares at
not
a girl
even
whose
that
body
extreme
is
one who I think what he's trying to say is someone who approaches or
correct
gets to the point of like it, and to Liz's point, that's gonna it's one of those things where damn if you do, damn if you don't. Right?
Yeah, but I think it's becoming a double standard because if a girl is, I'm so sorry, if a girl
asks for it,
no one's saying that anyone asked for it. People should have enough
said.
self-control.
That's exactly what was just said.
Okay,
right?
But at the same time, you need to take responsibility if somebody absolutely does come up to you and you're completely showing things
absolutely.
That the Bible gives clear directive. Women should adorn themselves in respectable apparel with modesty and self-control. So are we going to listen to the Bible and its directives for everything, or are we going to pick and choose?
We always pick and choose. That's humanity. According to the Bible, Junior shouldn't be showing his thighs because that's immodest for a man. You should not show your anything above
I fully agree with what you're saying. I fully agree with, but to Rachel's point, that doesn't make it correct.
No,
right?
It doesn't.
Not because we're selective biblically, doesn't make it correct. And that's why we fall into these disparities. That's why we fall into these issues. So yes, I am agreeing with you. And I'm glad that you pointed that out because we all do things completely outside of the biblical truth that puts us in issues. That's the truth. However, we can't say because of someone's cultural upbringing, because of their experiences, because of things that they're now comfortable in, that they've asked for something. Because we talk about the idea of intention. Their intention is to feel good. Their intention is to feel comfortable.
Their intention is to be seen.
Either way, not be seen, but not be seen in a way
because I'm wearing my favorite color.
I know.
Yeah, but not be seen.
Me too.
But
I
not
also
be,
like my
Rachel,
blue shirt.
But not be seen in a way that causes them to get even more uncomfortable. That's not okay to say, in my opinion.
But men, by their very nature, are visual characters.
So are women.
And so they are attracted to.
Yeah, so
they are
are
attracted to. Yeah,
So
but guys aren't showing their
listen.
butt cheeks
I am standing
in
up for men, yes, but we can't. We run into the problem when we put responsibility on one thing and not responsibility on the other thing. As men, we need. The Bible says we need to learn to control ourselves.
Absolutely.
Right.
So
and
yes,
even the thought of lust is the action of, or the thought of adultery is the action of adultery. And
it goes both ways. It goes both ways.
We can't just sit around judging other people. Like that's exactly the opposite of the Bible is so paradoxical in a sense that, in one, chapter, verse, book of the Bible, you'll find a phrase that says one thing, and then in another you'll find literally the exact opposite. And in considering who the audience was for that scripture during that time, who the author was, why that particular message was written for that particular audience at the time. Because if we're talking Old Testament, you have to understand what audience that was written for at the time. If we're talking New Testament, who was Paul talking to in his letters? He was talking to the people of Corinth. He was talking to Timothy. He was talking directly to people.
First Timothy.
So that is Paul speaking to Timothy about his thoughts and beliefs of this particular subject matter in a specific context as well. Because there are other places in the Bible where it celebrates, I adorn you with the rings in your nose and the way that adornment is celebrated in the opposite of what would be considered modest during that time frame. So there's a lot of paradoxical scripture that says one thing in one place and says something totally different in another place.
I would disagree with you. The Bible has no contradiction.
It does.
And it has no contradiction. But we could argue that context. Down. Well, yes, because of context, but that doesn't mean that it has a contradiction.
Right. Within itself, there are literally sections, verses
there are
in the Bible
lessons that seem to be completely different.
Because they are.
But they're
there's
not
a reason
contradicting.
For that.
Right.
But they are different.
Absolutely, but not contradicting.
Right.
All right, cool.
Meg, though, you and I were just briefly talking a little bit, and you were talking about how there have been times where you've also been concerned for the way women dress and how they portray themselves online. So,
I'll use an example, and I want to be, I'm not going to go into much detail because I want to protect the folks that I've talked about privately, but I'm a manager, and I've been a manager of people for the last 10 years. And at a previous company, there would be intern season. And so a lot of individuals that would come from college campuses and work with us for the summer. And, being in California, it's the sunshine state, right? Well, I guess Florida is as well, but we call it sunshine as well. And for what women would wear at 22, 23 to a big campus for their summer internship wasn't necessarily professional. And I remember having a conversation with one of the individuals that I managed saying, you can't wear short shorts and a crop top to the workplace. It's not professional. And explained what professional attire looked like. And that was probably back in 2014. And I sat with that after, letting her know this, because at that same time I was in a pretty toxic relationship with an individual who I wasn't wearing enough. I was wearing too much, and I couldn't leave his sight without being told that what I was wearing wasn't to his standard. And I've sat with that over the years to think, well, what is professional? And I think when we think about how, and I'll speak to this as my experience and how that has, translated into the way that I present myself in different settings is, again, Liz, to your point, it's about intent. It's about audience. It's about what am I walking into to know how I should be presenting myself. If I'm going to the beach, I'm not wearing this turtleneck that I'm wearing today. I should feel free, empowered, able to wear a bathing suit. And however I want that bathing suit to look, so be it. If I'm in the workplace, though, I should be wearing, something that is more modest because of it's a working place. So it goes back to intent. It goes back to it really being, and this is where that black and white and gray line and all of that really does exist. It just being really intentional about thinking about how I would like to present myself.
Yeah, and in workplaces, that's why they have employee manuals that give people guidelines on what's expected to be worn at work. If you expect to work at that place of business, then you have a guide and a manual that has been provided to you to explain and to lay out what professional attire is not. Usually that's how it's worded, like this is what you should avoid, and then the rest is left to personal taste and interpretation, because they'll tell you, ripped jeans are not allowed, or T-shirts with graphic logos are not allowed. But it's very rare, I think, in this time period where you find, and I'm sure it's because of legal reasons, obviously, where you find an employee handbook that says this is what you have to wear, unless there's a specific uniform involved. But if there's no specific uniform involved, the language is often, this is what you should avoid. Like, don't wear sneakers, don't wear, it's very, it's implicit about the, what not to do instead of what they suggest you wear. And I'm sure that's because of the legal, tightrope that a lot of corporations have to walk when they're putting their guidelines in writing, that they're not discriminatory or, that they don't exclude or target certain people for various reasons.
Right. But I'm not sure that the workplace is where people are overly concerned. I think when... No. It's where no, hold on. The audiences that I'm speaking about. I think that they're mostly concerned in social settings where girls will go and maybe drink, or they don't necessarily have full control of their situation or what's going on around them because they become inhibited or uninhibited, or they're drunk. Or
well, if you are worried about how your girl is dressed to go to a bar where she's gonna get drunk, I think we need to have a conversation more about where you're taking.
That's a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Listen, this is a very sensitive topic, and we live in a very sensitive society.
That's why we're taking the stairs and talking about it.
I love that we all have very strong and different opinions.
Yep.
And I choose to take a very neutral position. I think the world is doing a bad job at telling everyone that you need to be who you want to be. That's a problem. Here's why it's a problem for me. And this is just coming from biblical truth.
Right.
Sometimes you cannot see the things that you're doing wrong. And you are going to need someone by your side. And we've talked about friendships and family throughout many of our podcasts. You're going to need someone who could tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, I think this is a little much. And we all can agree that we live in a very extreme society, right? But also, everyone has to take responsibility. Men do control. We do control. It is our nature. And when we want to protect,
instinct.
Right. So when we want to protect, it is a control. I think to both Meg's and Liz's point, we should have a conversation like, hey, why is this such a bother for you? Is there an insecurity that you're not talking about that is bothering you with how I dress? Do you not trust me? Is it that you are just not comfortable with the way I dress? If that's the case, okay, cool. Because once you get into a relationship, though biblically you shouldn't be in a relationship if your intent is not to marry a woman, but if you choose to be in a relationship with a woman, you are in a partnership. You guys are in a union. It is a mutual work relationship, right? So yes, I should be able to comfortably tell you like, hey, we are working on a relationship. This makes me feel uncomfortable the way you dress. Here's why it makes me feel uncomfortable. I'm a little bit insecure when other guys look at you. I'm a little bit insecure to X, Y, and Z. Or I truly just have a problem with controlling everything. I just want to control everything. Case in point, this is a boss of mine, once upon a time boss of mine, and I have an expertise in a certain area, right? He doesn't have the expertise in a certain area. Talk about that. It's a natural male instinct to want to control, whether it's over another guy friendship-wise or a female, right? I've had the conversation with him numerous times, like, hey, bro, you're going to have to release and let me handle this, right? You're going to, because you don't know anything in this area. But because he feels like he's hierarchy-wise, he's a boss. And this is how male and female relationship work, right? He does not want to relinquish that power because now he feels out of control.
Right.
And it's not that his intent is to control, but it is control because he does not want to lose the autonomy over knowing that this is my territory and I have no say in it. The reality is some things we just have to, as men, relinquish to a woman.
Well, we're the same. We have equally different, but still equally toxic.
To my point, Rachel,
traits.
We all have to take responsibility.
Correct.
We can't say, oh my God, you have caused that because you wanted that. You asked for that. That's not true, because then where's the responsibility on the men's side? And we talk about biblical, like, bro, control yourself. It is not your property to even want to touch, whether she dresses skimpy or not. And to listen, for the record, I personally would not want my wife to dress in a certain way. Absolutely not.
I mean,
why?
you brought circle back around to what I was saying.
No, but I could tell you why. I could have that conversation.
I think they can too.
No, they can't, because
yes, they
that's
can.
why
they
they're
know
having
what's
the problem.
Out there. They know
Rachel,
what's out there.
If they could have had that conversation in a respectful way, it wouldn't have bothered them. Absolutely. There's no frustration to be had. Because if I could look at my wife and say, hey, listen, here's why I prefer you not to dress that way. I do not want a woman who's committed to me to be in a way, put herself in a position to engage negativity and evil. Right? I don't want her to be lust after by another man in a way that a man will like go, oh my God.
Why is anyone making the assumption that these young men haven't been able to say that? That's not even remotely close.
Because you said they are frustrated.
They are frustrated.
But frustration means undealt with issues that are not sorted out, so there's no conversation.
These young men are frustrated because they have talked to these women and said, listen, I'm worried that this is going to happen.
Right? It's girls, right?
But I'm also...
You're only assuming I also spoke to only teenagers.
Well,
I've spoken to... I know. Yesterday I had a very large group of teenagers and I spoke with them, but there are men from... I mean, I haven't spoken to anyone over 50, but men in all the age ranges that I've spoken to in the past month. So
give us context.
Because
we're just going to assume based on what you say.
Yeah.
Okay. I alluded last week. Remember, I said that there was a young man who watches the podcast.
That's all I heard.
That's all we knew.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I also have spoken to, I've done a lot of research, and I have said that men in general are feeling that their baser instinct, especially their protective instinct, is under attack. Now, it may be how they're articulating that to the women that they know, but I've talked to a number of men who have this issue or these feelings. And we're sitting here on air, but I mean, I'm hoping that you're being as, forthcoming about how you feel about it as you possibly can. These young men have had conversations, or middle-aged men or whatever, guys in their 20s, guys in their 30s have had conversations even with wives. And they have said, listen, this really bothers me because when we're out together, I see men stare at you or guys come up to you. And when we're not together, I don't want those things to happen. I don't want bad things to happen to you. And the girls in general, from what I understand, my own personal opinion is not going to be here on this podcast. I am now speaking for the things that I have been asked to speak about. And this is this is a very specific topic. And my own personal thoughts are I have thoughts as a woman, I have thoughts as just like a human being. So these guys have articulated the reason that they don't want their girlfriends to dress that way or their wives to dress that way. I spoke to more people with girlfriends than wives.
Right.
And
so
they
here's
have
my
said,
thing, Ray. We choose to come on this podcast to take the stairs,
right,
which means we can't be in defense of X or Y.
Right.
Right. We can come to a conclusion at the end when we do our we take to say, hey, based on this conversation, you know what? This is where I'm going to. But even on Liz's stance and your stance, I feel like we are taking a very clear stance on how we personally feel. Because I could almost tell you're in defense of what these guys are feeling. When the truth is, we have to be good steward of the faith to say, hey, brothers, that frustration is coming from somewhere. Mm-hmm. There's a conversation that needs to be had, especially as a young adolescent. And to Liz's point, like they haven't even grown into their manhood yet. So they're only taking learned behavior and acting on that, thinking that they have to stand in this kingdom base, I don't want to say to Z's point, but like Z would say, this is my kingdom. Like they want to stand in this kingdom place and rule over all things. And a part of that is making sure that the woman that they're dating is dressing the way they want them to dress. And that's where the control problem comes in to what Liz is defending. She does not think that a man, and I'm assuming based on the conversation that a man should tell any woman how to dress. And there's a large part of that is true because a man is coming from a place of control rather than to allow a woman to express herself in a way that she wants to. We need to have a conversation as men. Since this is a podcast, this season is about men, we need to have a conversation about us as men. What are we doing to make women feel so bad about the way they dress that we can't control our lust?
I mean, yeah.
And a lot of times you find in situations where that contention exists in the relationship is that it wasn't an issue when they chose to date the woman. When they chose to approach her, they were guided by the same attraction standards that they now don't want her exercising because now they've entered into a relationship. So it's a double-edged sword in a way because it's like, okay, now I saw you, I was attracted to you, I like what I saw.
I don't want nobody else to do that.
Cover it all up.
Yeah, lock it up. So you see how that could start to become the frustration?
Sure. And then it's like, this is the person,
I'm a female.
This is who I was.
I'm not necessarily on the male side. I'm sitting here I have my own personal thoughts about it. I think we should have enough self-control to be able to understand when an appropriate place and an appropriate time is. I have been asked, please, to address this. So that's what I'm trying to do.
And that's what we're doing. So don't think, as I'm saying,
that's not
don't
my
think it's an
personal
attack
opinion.
on
I don't think
anyone.
this is you. We're just saying the issue in and of
Yeah.
itself. There's so many factors.
Sure.
There's so many contributing negative and positive resources that are coming into play with a conversation like this. One, because it's a lot of, it's a lot of, hearsay because the actual people who you talk to aren't here to expound more on the why. So that kind of puts us up against a wall. It's like we can only go so far in this conversation because it's a lot of just speculation and it's like you're just speaking into a void because, yes, you presented the issue, but you can't go further in the argument.
There's no cross-examination with them.
That, like, what more can we do except do what we're doing because there's nothing to bounce it off of.
Right.
Well, and I think too, at my age, I still have conversations wrong. And I think no matter what age of male you speak to, the way that anybody who may say that, well, this is how I had my conversation with this individual or my girlfriend, my partner, we're taking their word for it, that it was as gentle and kind and, from that perspective. And I know from my perspective that I may say to somebody, well, I swear I said it like this.
Megs,
when really,
come on now.
What I know, when really, I probably could have taken some notes out of a different book of how I entered a conversation, right? Yeah. So I think it is how the conversation is had. And I say this a lot, and I know this is I'm taking something that I use at work and bringing it here, but feedback conversations, it's like building a muscle. You have to practice giving feedback, right? And I know that sounds a little harsh for a relationship, but this is what it is. It's feedback. And the more we practice, the more we dig into where is this feedback coming from? Why am I saying it? And it gives folks the opportunity to really be insightful and think about, where is this coming from? Is there something I can learn from this? Is there something applicable, or is it kind of like take this with a grain of salt? So I think the more we practice, I think the more we step in and lean into conversations. I think it's easy to, the first time that maybe one of these male relationship mans has this conversation, they get a reaction that they don't like, and they're like, oh, well, never going to have that again because that's how it went. And then at the other end of the spectrum, the woman's like, well, I'm sure as heck I'm going to take my cardigan off when I get onto my Uber because I don't want him to say anything to me again. And then resentment is built.
Agreed.
Right? Absolutely.
100%.
I think if we can really just commit ourselves to practice makes perfect with these conversations. And then, if you're having this conversation so many times and that person's not the person for you, because you shouldn't also have to feel like you're coaching or overly protecting. That's not a relationship at the end of the day. If you feel like you always have to be having these types of conversations.
No, I agree with you. So if you want my actual personal opinion, it's not necessarily what you say, but how you say it. So I don't mind somebody having a thought about what I should dress like or what I shouldn't dress like. But instead of being like, hey, you're a big woman of the night, I'm going to say that, woman of the night. I think that's going to be a nicer way because I know these teenagers may not be saying it in that way. Maybe you just get more clear and have a kinder intention as opposed to an emotional reaction. You have a real conversation. You give evidence for it. And you cannot boss a woman around. We don't live in those times, thankfully. I, as a woman, don't think I would want somebody telling me what to do. This is a particularly hard conversation for me. And the reason I've been kind of tense about it is because I actually really can't stand when anyone tells me what to do. I am not a woman who likes to be told what to do at all. I have a lot of triggers around that. I had a Middle Eastern dad, and it was his way or it was no way. And that is very hard for me. So I had to really sit and think about this. And I don't want someone to tell me what to do. But I don't mind a friend coming to me. And if they say, hey, Ray, I see this, I'm going to be more inclined to listen. So if I have advice for the young men after this conversation, I would say it's probably how you're saying it. It's probably not necessarily what you're saying, but life will teach you how to soften the rough edges and understand that women, I don't think necessarily mind somebody saying something or trying to have a position of leadership, but relationships are supposed to be equal. We're supposed to understand that each person is human and nobody's perfect. So it's probably how you're saying it that's really getting to the females in your life, if I had a personal opinion in this.
I agree. And if we could do a flip of that, and from the start of this episode, I think my sentiments has been true to that same concept in just really have a conversation.
Right.
And it is not what you say is how you say it, but what if we look at it this way? If we think about how we say something, then it will dictate what we say. Because what we say also is a problem too, right? No, I can't look at you and say, do not dress that way. Now that's a matter of what I say. whatever,
Right.
how I said it, it doesn't even matter because I could
Right.
look at you and go, no, you should not wear that. Or no, you shouldn't wear that. Or no, it doesn't matter how I say that. You are going to receive it as a command because it is a command, no matter how I flip it. But what if we go, think about how you are going to say something and it would determine what you say. Because what you say also does matter too,
Sure.
because that sticks to someone's brain. Because if I look at, not to bring your business into this, but if I look at you, Megs, because you've struggled with image based on what you just say and go, oh my God, that shirt makes you look a little bit more plump. How I said it is very nice, right? And not, you get what I'm saying? But it's still
Totally.
what I said that's going to sit in your head over and over and over. Like, is he saying that I look? You start to assume so many things, but let's think about what we say so it can determine how we say it. Because even the lady of the night comment could definitely turn some people off. You know what I mean? Because for
I'm
them,
not calling them lady of the night.
No. I'm saying just
Yeah.
by saying
I was
that,
being
it could
nice.
just trigger something
Yeah.
else into someone.
Right.
You have to know your audience. Discernment is very important.
Yeah.
You are in a mutual relationship, and if you feel compelled to tell someone an opinion, it means that you guys have established some grounds of communication that you should think about who you're talking to, think about what you're saying, so it can determine how you say it. Think about how you're saying it so it can determine what you say.
So maybe the quality of leadership that men want to take, they need to absolutely learn how to speak as a leader and not necessarily as an autocrat or a dictator or an
They
authoritative
need
figure.
to also
Yeah.
learn how to speak as sinners. If
Oh,
we're keeping
yes.
this in the root of our
Biblical knowledge.
we are all sinners. We are not meant to judge one another.
Mm-hmm.
And the elevation, like the self-elevation and the ego, like Meg pointed to, that get mixed in with the male protective instinct are what convolutes and really taints that instinct, because men, I think, overall are not taught what to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of runs, wild and gets out of control because it's mixed. It's like, amalgamized with so many other factors that there's a confusion that comes into play. Well, is this ego, or is this protection, or is this what I feel is my role as like the husband in the marriage, or like what actually is not necessarily the intention, but what is the motivating factor, and what are the contributing factors that are in play. And a lot of people just aren't even equipped not only to have that conversation with another person, but with themselves as well.
Yeah.
And a lot of, cherry picking, like we said, happens in the, Christian community. That's why you have all these different,
Perspective on
sects
things.
of religion, of Christianity, is because people cherry pick what they want to attach themselves to, and they run with that.
Yeah.
And that is why, I pointed out that in many instances, yes, not contradicting content in the Bible, but there are areas and verses in the Bible that, appeal to some groups for whatever reason.
Absolutely.
And that, other groups completely ignore or disregard. I mean, in the building, like, of their community or their family or whatever the case, like the little protective, the world that they're trying to protect is governed by what they want it to be governed by when they're cherry picking from biblical teaching. So that is, another thing, exactly, the opposite of what Jesus taught, in a sense, when he talked about, this very strict rule following of the Pharisees and all that. It's like, just treat each other how you want to be treated. Love your neighbor. There is no God before me. And that's it. You know, all these rules and all this other stuff, don't just, that's why Jesus broke the rules all the time, to show that here I am, God in human form on earth, showing you that is not what's important.
Yeah.
And it was done so many times that obviously you have to kind of, look at that in a way as its own broader lesson that's the umbrella for the individual lessons that Jesus taught through his actions and in his words.
Mm-hmm.
Also, you have to look at the thematic lesson when you look at all of his actions and the things that he did over the course of the time that he was here on earth. When you look at that under, a theme, and the theme is, very clear. He opposed, the ruling authority and the old ways, and that's why it's called the good news. That's why it's called the gospel. That's why it's called the New Testament, because that is the model that we should be looking at as Christians, because there was no Christianity before Jesus. Not to say disregard the Old Testament, but that is a theme that we just, it has to be seen as the, broader umbrella. That is literally what he had to walk through and show us. That was literally going to be the end of his earthly life, was rebelling against what was in power.
I think to your point, I think what Christ, and not I think, but based on my biblical knowledge, what Christ is trying to emulate is to show you that beyond rules and regulations, there's relationship.
Right. There's how you treat people.
There's a deeper form of love that you're going to have to exude in order to live cohesively in this life, right?
Correct.
If we continue to base things off the rules and regulations that we've governed under based on the world or based on our own cultural upbringing, then we are going to run into problems. Because what we're ultimately going to do, and especially society is doing a big campaign on this and saying, hey, you express yourself in your way, you express yourself in your way, what we run into is you're then going to start to force onto me your belief, and I'm going to try to force on you to your belief.
Right.
So now it separates relationship. And what Christ did very well was say, hey, what if we do away with certain rules? However, we still have to govern under moral laws, right? There are some moral laws that we still have to govern under, right? Those are just basic level, which is to love one another, respect, which are all the things that govern a relationship. If we are to just take a moment and understand someone, it will create a much better cultural society than we think. The reality is we should not be prompting anyone with a command. Christ himself doesn't prompt us with a command other than the commandments and the moral laws that we are going to follow. But he said, come into me and I'll change that for you. I don't need you to think about all the sins that you're doing. What I need you to do is come in and find a relationship with me first. Once you have a relationship with me, then I could change the way you see things, how you govern yourself in this world, how you move through this world. Now your characteristics are going to be Christ-like. And I think that's what we need to start to push a lot more is if you are in a relationship, be in a relationship. Ask questions. Hey, why do you dress like that? Maybe this girl has been hurt before, and this is her way of truly screaming out to say, I need help. Or maybe she's just so comfortable in who she is, and that's a confidence she wants to put out. Ask questions. Hey, do you think, just ask genuine questions, and it will give you genuine answers. And that way you go, it's made me uncomfortable the way you dress, but now I understand where you're coming from. And I would love to give you my perspective, if anything else. And here's where I'm coming from. It might not change her mind, but she's gotten to a point where she's respect you so much in that relationship that eventually, guess what's going to happen? She's just going to start to change the way she dresses. And I'm not saying it's a control mechanism, but it's a respect mechanism, because then you're going to respect her so much that rather than thinking this is a kingdom that I got to rule, it's like, wow.
Yeah, like if two people are aligned in that way, then that's what they're working toward in the relationship.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or they decided that it's not the relationship for them, because I think too,
exactly.
that's where
that's a choice that has to be made.
The loss of control can come, right? And that's where really, I think that, Rachel, you mentioned at the beginning, that toxic behavior comes into play, because when you feel like when anybody, it's not male, female, whatever, when you feel like you're losing control, that's when the whatever stereotypes we have as male, female, they come into play.
Right.
Because now we're trying to regain what we're losing.
Absolutely.
And that's not a good thing. So I think what's also really important, Junior, I like the point that, as you learn more, you ask these questions, maybe that brings you more into alignment, but also be okay that it couldn't prove to you that you're never
not
going to
the
be
person.
Exactly.
Yes.
And that's okay.
Absolutely.
We can't be so attached to the what ifs or the potential of somebody. Be okay with also saying, well, based off of what they've shared, believe them.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. I think we get so caught up in our own destination and our own narrative that we find ourselves controlling situations because we don't want a relationship to end. Sometimes we go into relationship thinking it's forever, when the reality, as you grow and start to ask questions, even as simple as friendships, you go, you know what? I think I've come to the realization that we don't longer serve each other.
You can't drag other
and
people
we're
along your
unevenly
journey.
yoked. We are unevenly yoked.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what genuine relationship brings. It tells you if or if not.
That's right.
Period.
Is that your we take?
No.
All right. Well, it's time for our we takes.
Oh, look at us. This was a good conversation.
Can you explain what a we take is?
So
of course.
One thing I wanted to point out too is, and sorry to go over, but we all have to take responsibility to your initial defense that both sides are acting from a place of lust, right? To show boobs and butt and legs and whatever, any form of skin,
right?
Though you feel like you're on the receiving end of the lust, you are still outputting lust, right? Because you're opening the door for someone else's eyes to fetishize the things that what we can consider lust of the flesh. So we both sides of the party have to be careful with us using lust as a way to say, well, this is just how I want to dress.
So is that not the very definition of asking for it?
No, I'm not saying that it's okay to say that someone is asking for it. I'm saying both sides need to take responsibility in saying that we are creating a world where lust continues to live.
I agree.
So yes, a woman dressed in a certain way to allure attention.
Agreed.
But it's not them asking for it. To ask for something means you intentfully go out there saying, I want this. No woman go out there and say, I want to be touched in the wrong way or whatever. That's
not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about asking for attention, asking for the attention.
But when you say ask for it, that's the extreme that you're going to have to think about.
I wasn't talking in extremes.
Attention is a completely different thing. I'm giving Meg's attention. She might not be asking for it.
You're talking about lust.
Though Meg has some
and seeking attention
main
in that
character
way.
energy sometimes.
Period.
No one is asking for the extreme. And I think that's what comes to mind when you say a woman is asking for it. Because we all in this room can assume that what you wear, you automatically are going to get attention. So we can't put that into the question of asking for, because you dress a certain way because you want attention. Cool, great, cool, not a problem. But when you say ask for it, we're driving in a completely different lane now. We're talking about...
I never think any assault or anybody being inappropriate is okay.
No, I'm not saying you do, but when you say to ask for something...
I'm not talking about violations.
Liz, would you assume that
attention.
when someone say to ask for something...
Yeah, the phrase itself has its own connotation just because of cultural,
Exactly.
understanding of what that phrase
And
means.
remember,
so it's not a phrase you can just throw out there and not expect that extra level of, connotation
Caution.
to be associated with it. I think.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And we're not talking for ourselves.
Oh, I've not. This
We
whole
are on
podcast,
a
I haven't talked about
podcast.
myself. Yeah, that's not my own personal opinion.
We are talking for the audience.
Correct.
So we want to make sure that we're breaking down certain things.
Sure.
In the world, if we were to go out there and you said, to your point, when the woman goes back to the man and go, well, this happened to me and this happened to me and this happened to me. And your sentiments was, well, you asked for it. Well, I don't think that's the ask for.
No, that's not what I said. I didn't say they asked for it. They
said
then
that's
expect
what
the
they-
man to fix it.
No, I think you said ask for it.
Oh.
But if I'm wrong, I'm wrong.
All right.
No,
I may have said it.
you did say it, but I don't think you got that far as to say the last part, that they then expect the man to fix
They
it.
do. That's what the young men were saying.
Right. So just to break it down, we are not saying woman asks to be molested or anything of the sort.
That shouldn't even exist in the world.
We are specifically speaking about the attention portion of it. And we want to take out the ask part and just fully dive into like how we both maneuver through life in a very lustful way. And we have to take responsibility both sides. To Liz's point, we all have to speak from a place of we are sinners, and which simply means we got to own up to the lust that we bring to the world sometimes.
Okay. That's a good point. So now it is time for our we takes.
Yes.
So our we take is just, Meg, like what we've taken away the most from the conversation. And in the start of our podcast, we talked about the options of, taking the stairs being the hardest route through the conversation, or, taking the elevator, taking the escalator, like what level of, so there's kind of a twofold understanding of our we take. Like, was it a difficult conversation? Was it, one that you felt like comfortable having or ready to have? And what was your biggest takeaway from the discussion?
Do you want to go first, Meg, or do you want to wait?
I'd go first.
Yay.
Okay. My number one takeaway is I think this is beautiful. It's tough to have hard conversations. So I do think we took the stairs, but in a really positive way. Hearing, I've learned a lot, because I think that being consumed by social media, seeing what, different celebrities or TikToks are wearing, I'm quick to add to my bag, right? And am I really making thoughtful choices as a woman, thinking about what I want to wear so that I'm representing myself?
Yeah.
One more piece to that is, let's please continue having conversations, being in partnership, in relationship, platonic or romantic, practice. Have them. If it doesn't go well, that's okay. Say, you know what? I don't like the way I showed up in that conversation. Let's now that we're both more calm, let's have it again. So keep at it. And if it's not going in the direction that you want, get off the bus.
Yeah.
It's good.
All right. I think my we take is just that the world that we live in, I think this conversation really just kind of it illustrated the the kind of polarizing nature of just our culture and all that we consume on a daily basis. It's very polarizing on purpose. So if people had more understanding about what they're, being exposed to, how they're being, shaped and manipulated by the world around them, and put in the work to like truly understand what their position is and the why behind, their positions on things, then it would help those conversations to be more productive, because a lot of people can sit down and have a conversation, but they're not even being honest with themselves in the conversation, let alone the other person. So I think there's so much work to be done, consistently, like no matter what age you are, or if you're male or female or whatever. I think the important work of really getting to know yourself and the why behind who you are, and the why behind what your position is on certain things will just help us be more genuine and authentic as we navigate through the world. And an issue like this that is prevalent, obviously, it's so divisive when it doesn't have to be, if healthy communication were actually a part of the equation.
So good.
And it rarely ever is, because people, are so offended by like what they've postured, what they've presented, and they're not even being honest with why they feel the way they do. So I think a lot of, it just kind of reiterated the need for like constant self-reflection and really, going back to your foundation, whatever that is for you, if it's your spirituality or, if you're in therapy doing that work, that's awesome. But it needs to be broader. Like, our society needs more of that. It needs to be in schools. It needs to be, more present in family dynamic, whatever your family looks like. But that work of just, accepting oneself and really owning who you are and the why behind that is so important.
Right. Well, for me, I think I kind of always go back to I'm really trying to understand, as a mom of 2 boys, I'm trying to understand them. So I like the conversations that I'm having. I don't always agree with necessarily the way young men are coming across or the way young women are coming across, but I definitely think that my advice to young people, woman, man, female, male, is that when you want to take that sort of natural leadership role or that natural maternal role, don't go into conversations triggered. Go into conversations calm. Know that the person on the other end also has feelings. So if you're feeling protective as a young man, be able to articulate, like Junior was saying, the things that you want, the reasons that you're worried calmly. Don't call them names. Don't ever call us names. It's not kind, and we shouldn't ever call you names. Know that your instincts are absolutely right, but it's your delivery of them. And leadership is all about how you take people from point A to point B in a conversation or a situation. And so be mindful, because when you go in and you're puffed up and you're alpha mailing, that's maybe something that is a result of a trigger or something where you're not feeling heard. Be mindful of that and understand that the person that you're talking to also has those same things. And maybe that would work a little bit better for you.
Yeah. I mean, I love what everyone is saying. Honestly, this whole conversation, I've just been so convicted because it's very clear to me that I have my own bias. We
Sure.
all have our own bias. And we always, to Liz's point, try to justify those biases based on our own sinful nature. And I think it's very important for us to always reflect before even going into a conversation. Why am I feeling this way? What is it that I am insecure about? What is my lusts that I'm trying to hide, that I'm going into this to control it so that more of my lust can be hidden? I think a lot of that is how male operates. We understand how we see women,
Right.
how we kind of sexualize women. So the moment our women do that, it is from our own lustful experience. So I think this conversation really has given me a completely new meaning to relationship. And though I said it in the podcast, it doesn't mean that I'm always living it. And it's a work in progress, right?
Sure.
Like, I'm not perfect, and I don't think anyone here is perfect. And I think we're all coming from a place where we do want to understand. And today, this was one of those understanding moments for me, in that, wow, it takes a lot for relationship. And to really, truly do relation with someone from even a Christ-like perspective, it is going to be a situation where you come to an agreement of either this is for me or this isn't.
Right.
And that we have to be okay with. We have to be okay with saying goodbye to the things that are not for us, because Christ does have a plan. And a part of that plan is for us to do the work in figuring out who he wants to align with us. And what happens is we have to go into relation in order to figure out those relationships.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure.
And I think today's one of those moments where I'm like, whoa, I'm someone who wants to hold on to relationships and control, even though I feel like it's protection. And that goes to even my family. That goes to my friendship. That goes to dating.
Yeah.
But it is to protect the things that I'm trying to hide. So I think that today's one of those days where I want to put out there for everyone and reflect on your own things. What are the things that you are hiding that is causing you to try to control the people that are in your alignment? So I got some reflecting to do. This was a very hard conversation for me.
Yeah.
Everyone push me up that stairs, though I wanted to take the elevator. And I respect that on all boards, but we came to a great conclusion here.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And thank you all for tuning in.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
We'll
and
be
thank
back
you,
next
Meg,
week.
for being our guest.
Absolutely,
Thank
Meg.
you.
You're awesome.
Thank you,
Thank you.
guys.
This was
Awesome
awesome.
guest. Yeah, absolutely.